Welcome to Mask Off this week. We've got a good friend of mine who I work with and is a colleague, and I'm really excited for this episode. She's going to introduce herself, and I'm going to hand over to Kay.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm actually an aviation engineer, but I ended up working for Nightingale Hospital this year.
What were you doing this time last year?
Well, I was working at one of the hospitals here in South London, and I was trying to get home back to Bahrain, and there weren't any flights. But on Christmas Day, I booked a ticket back home just on a whim, packed a bag, and 7 hours later, I was in Bahrain.
Nice.
So,
What were you doing in the hospital?
I was coordinating a project. So I'm an independent contractor. I take on short-term projects. So the same clients that I worked with at the hospital here in South London were the same clients I worked with on Nightingale as well.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because obviously I work with you. And if I'm being dead honest, I know you're super hardworking. I know you're logistical. I know you crunch the numbers. But I don't really know what it is you do in a way.
Right, Alex, the answer is I don't know either, but I just go along with it, right? Now, as an independent contractor, you can pick and choose what role you want to do, but my focus is on project management. So it can be short-term projects or long-term advisory roles as well. And I think long-term roles I take on to about a year, but it's all mainly either project coordination, and now it's come into project management. And I've done like project lead work as well. So it ranges, but it's all coming under the project management banner.
And what got you into that?
I lose interest very easily, so short-term projects hit the spot.
And other projects, can they be anything? So I literally have no idea. I have quite a few friends who say they're project manager, and I just smile and nod. And can it be anything? Like, is it that you learn the fundamentals of managing a project, or is there like specific areas that you prefer?
It's very interesting with projects because I've had clients who were like education providers, so universities and like independent consultancies, but I've also had NHS clients and government clients, things like that. And it changes. It's interesting because you've got to learn about the company, the background, the industry, and then also try and adapt into the project environment and see how it all works together. So to be honest with you, I figure it as I go along. So I'm no expert, and I find that interesting more than anything else. My background is essentially aviation engineering, and I like operations, logistics, airports, terminals, aircraft maintenance. All of that was like my go-to. But I want to expand and see how different industries work. And I quite like jumping from project to project with completing it, not just leaving it up in the air and saying, okay, bye, I've done my work now. So that's the thing that I like. And I'm not fully telling you the truth. I take these breaks and contracts because in my spare time, I also paint. So I'm an abstract artist, and I've done like corporate clients, a few footballers, rap artists. And yeah, so it's been it's an interesting dynamic.
That's interesting.
That's a cool part-time job. What is the weirdest thing you've had to paint?
Okay, so one of my clients, we're doing a musical for Lady Gaga, and it was supposed to take place in Mayfair, and this was just before COVID kicked in, and we signed the contract and everything. And when they told me that we want you to abstractly paint female private parts, and I thought I shouldn't have signed it without actually reading the T's and C's. And but I had committed to it, and then COVID kicked in, and I found a loophole to get out. So it's fun.
That is good.
That would have been an interesting project. So some good things have come out of COVID.
Yeah, some good things have definitely come out of that. Yep.
I'm quite interested in what you were saying about like jumping in, completing, and then jumping out. How does that work when we're in a pandemic with a virus that you can't complete or you can't kind of contain? How does that work in terms of what you do in terms of jumping in? I know you're a part of like setting up the Nightingale. How does that work in terms of then leaving that space? Do you feel like you've completed it, or do you feel like there's some unfinished business there?
I think Nightingale hospitals were set up in a way to, like, it was a shock or surprise to everyone's system. So it was set up in a way to just adapt to what was going on. but it's on hold, knowing we don't really know what's going to happen next, but it's there if we need it. So far, thank God, we haven't had to use it to its full capacity, but it's there if people don't follow the rules and regulations that are in place. And we know the infection rates are rising. So it's there if it needs to be used. And that comes with the same with our roles and everything. So my project work was completed as soon as my contract got put on hold. That means Nightingale was put on hold. And so it's not necessarily I completed my role's on hold, and whether the client wants me back or not, that comes under a whole different conversation.
So yeah, so talk to me about that. You like, obviously this kind of with the client. Talk to me about what happens. So you get a phone call, or how do these people find you?
So the clients that I worked with, like at the hospitals here in South London, there were 2 hospitals and 7 of the community sites. So it's quite a big project to coordinate. And it was going really well. But after one point, I felt like, because I'm a Christian, and when I have these moments where God speaks to me, and I just felt like I didn't want to continue my role. So coming back to leaving a project without actually completing it, I still did all the work that I needed to do until the next phase of the project. But I left in December, went back home in January, came back midway, and February was sort of my quiet month. I was painting, selling some in galleries and then private clients. And out of nowhere, I get this text from one of the bosses that I worked with on the previous project. And they said, can you come to London Excel? And I said, yeah, sure, when? So I was thinking 2-3 days time. They said, right now. I said, okay. So found the nicest, cleanest sportswear I could. And I rocked up there. And I thought it's going to be a very informal chat. Sat down.
Because when you mentioned sportswear, I'm expecting that you've done some exercise to get there. Or was it that was just what you felt like on the day?
Look, I had to make my mind work, okay? I wasn't fully awake and they told me to come on site. So I thought, comfy clothes it is.
Yeah, comfy, all the way.
And I was like, let me just rock up there, maybe go for a run. But then the truth is, I don't even run away from my problems completely. So I just stood there in my sportswear. And they said, right, let's have a conversation about your role. And I said, okay. Sat down, they said, I'm going to be part of the operations and logistics team. And it's all mainly the internal logistics, movement of equipment and medical gear, scrubs. It could be anything from medical to non-medical. So it's like clinical stuff, non-clinical stuff, all on how it comes into the site, goes onto the ward and back out. So because it's COVID, we had lots of restrictions in place and security was tight on site. And I was thinking, right, great. Okay, so when do I start? And my boss looked at his watch and he said, 45 minutes ago. And I thought, great. So my first day of work, I'm wearing not very professional clothes. And that's my memory.
Yeah.
That's quite cool.
When you set something like that up, are there blueprints? Like, obviously, we've never seen anything like this. So, like, where does the plan come from? Is it just, do you go into a room and just hash it out with the team that's there? Or is there anything to draw upon?
Well, there were loads of different stakeholders on site, everyone bringing in their own different skills. And it's not necessarily everyone was from a healthcare background. There were loads of people from like events management and then. So we had like the London Excel team themselves on site helping us with portraying, moving things along. And they were adapting to it being set up as a hospital. And I still remember when we were all just working day and night, like there was no weekends. And we just had counterparts in place. Then this one day, there was this announcement on the speaker where everyone could hear. And they said, well, at this time, this date, we're now a fully operational hospital. And I remember everyone just starting to cry, applaud, like just sat there in a shock. And we were all very proud of ourselves because we set the whole place up within a very short time. And it's about how everyone came together rather than hiding behind job titles and seniority and who does what. Everyone just came together and said, right, if we've got to clean, we'll clean stuff together. If we want to do management planning, we'll do that together. So it was a huge team effort, truly one team.
Wow. I mean, that must have been a really cool, big, scary moment when that came on.
For most of it, it seemed like it wasn't really happening because you had people like in military wear, and I'm thinking, did they just rock up like I did with my sportswear, or they're actually military? Just like I couldn't even understand some of the things that were going on. And I did mention to my boss, listen, I've got an aviation background and we're setting up a hospital here. I don't know if I can do this. And he said, well, you can. If you can set up a airport, you can set up a hospital. And I said, yeah, that doesn't work, but let's try this.
Clearly it did.
Well, yeah, I'm glad it did. But now, looking back at things, I'm thinking we had about, I don't even know, like thousands of people inside. And because we were trying to figure out this pandemic, at that point, we were just figuring out what COVID was. And we were all there without masks and no social distancing. And I thought, okay, let's enforce these things. Let's, maintain social distance, and all that regulations kicked in later. But I thought we were all there laughing and talking and crying together.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it really happened.
Yeah. Did it almost feel like he was in Big Brother almost? Because it's like, if you're saying that you're doing like these back-to-back kind of shifts, long hours, and I guess at that point, the rest of the world they've cottoned on, but not to the intensity that you guys have cottoned on to. So it must feel a little bit like you're kind of in the in crowd, or like I don't know, like you're setting up for almost this new phase, or the new way that the world looks, without, I guess, the outside world knowing that all of this is taking place.
Yeah, it was quite annoying in the mornings, especially because I had to get Ubers in. And the Uber drivers didn't really get their news from anyone else. We're trying to get it out of people going into the hospital. And we've all had to be very careful about what we were saying, because rumor mills, it was just rumors out of rumors, small thing becoming big things for no reason. And people were just spreading fear more than anything else. And we thought, okay, as employees of this hospital, we need to stay calm and not scare anyone, because that wasn't the purpose of the hospital in the first place. And then you have all these Uber drivers giving me their conspiracy theories and telling me how to do my job. And I'm like, fantastic, thanks. This is exactly what I need. But then trying to get into the hospital as well, it was all gated. So the entire place was completely gated. You had securities up and down the lengths of it. And we had the military up and down the length of it. And it just seemed like a movie, like a really interesting action movie. And I remember reporters coming up with the recorders and cameras saying, any comments, what's your name? And I was like, please, no paparazzi. No, just trying to get in there as soon as I could. So yeah, looking back at things, it feels like it didn't happen, but it did.
That must have been so weird, having people trying to get your name and see what you're doing. And I cannot imagine that. I would have hated it.
Was it like us asking you to come on this podcast? Was it a similar feeling?
Oh yeah, of course. That's why you had to book an appointment, Alex.
One of the things I want to talk about, you've worked with the NHS before then. From your previous time with the NHS, did you notice a big shift in the way the projects were run?
Yeah, I think it was very different in the sense that the turnaround of how we come up with solutions. So if we had a problem, say at 9 a.m, we'd expect to have a solution by 9:10. So there was no delays. You'd come up as a team and come up with a solution, hash it out, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we needed to have a contingency in place as well. Yeah. So we weren't just thinking about one solution for a single problem. We're thinking about 6 solutions for the same problem. And we would try up to 3 different types to make sure at least one of it worked. And it was different because we also had to think very creatively, because that's something, especially in projects, you don't think about it in detail of maybe this approach is different, because you're very switched on. Project management is very specific in terms of how you apply your methodologies, your approaches. And for me, I found that as a personal frustration for myself in the first 2-3 days, I thought I couldn't do this. And there was a lot of personal strain as well, because my family, they're miles away. And they were just saying, if you go on this, we don't know if we'd ever see you again. And that sort of fear was there. And my mom and dad just said, well, if we've prayed and if this is what God wants for you, then we can't stop you. And that's exactly why I went on site and said, right, I know to a certain degree I might have to, give up everything, including my sleep and anything else, but it means it serves a greater purpose. So yeah, let's go with it. And overall, looking back at things, I've seen a very new style of managing projects, and that's what I'm trying to bring in my current work as well, on how you think it should feed and just sort of go with it rather than analyzing a lot of it in the forefront, because that's what you have to do in the first phase of the project. You sort of listen to all the different solutions coming in, put a plan in place, try out different stages of it. There was no trial and error on Nightingale. You tried it, and then you had to quickly change a place or change a person or change anything that you're using in that environment. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that sounds really different, and it sounds like in some situations that will be really good in the future.
So I'm basically keen to ask, what was your kind of hardest part of the Nightingale process or experience, and what was the kind of the best part of it?
I think I'll start with a challenging bit. I think there was this sense of, I don't know if it's fear, but waking up every morning, and every morning was a different hour. So sometimes you'd wake up at 4, sometimes 3, and you'd just be called in, or you'd just be on call. Yeah, it was challenging because you just didn't know what to expect. Because when you have a typical job description and you go by it, so you know what to expect in the day. I had to create my role from scratch, and I had to add responsibilities and delegate, and then some responsibilities I was not meant to do, but I was doing, and things like that. I saw myself, I just saw a very different side of me that I thought I could never do. And for me, like, confident in myself definitely went to another level. And like, I personally struggle with like confidence and like, oh yeah, this is what I can do and my abilities and things like that. But this experience just brought light to actually what any human being can do if they actually put their mind and heart to it, and that determination. I saw people go from strength to strength, and I saw strangers comfort other people, and people were losing loved ones left, right, and center. And I had to say goodbye to someone I knew as well. And it was midday during a normal working out about like 16 hours that day. And I had to say goodbye. And I remember those difficult conversations. Yeah, so I think a lot of emotions, a lot of, yeah, I just don't know how to phrase it, but it was emotional, very emotional. And coming back home over here again, like, I live alone, and it was just coming to four walls thinking, what's tomorrow going to be like? And so what I did was, instead of getting frustrated with myself, I just sat down and painted. So I've even got like a whole Nightingale collection, which I'm hoping to sort of release as soon as the lockdown and this COVID's gone, and just have like a whole gallery set up with all this artwork, because there are loads. Every day was a different painting.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. We talked to quite a few people about how they relax, and normally, like for the people we've spoken to, it's been a lot of exercise or eating cheese. So it's like painting is quite a cool one. What kind of things did you paint?
Mainly abstract work. And so it would be based on, so a typical work day, I would still come back, whether I came back home at 11 o'clock in the night, I'd still go and paint a little piece of the canvas at least. And it would mainly be influenced by my day. So my way of painting is all the emotions of the day I would just sort of take out on the canvas. And I started doing this thing where I would write a few lines just along those things. And sometimes the lines would just sort of like complement the painting, or I do the painting first and write later. It was just, I don't even know what to say when it comes to expressing myself on like a canvas, but it was entirely on my day and how it was. So now that I see it, some of them are really bright. That means clearly I've had a great day. Some of them are really dark, and I'm thinking, what happened? Like, why are you so troubled? That painting says a lot without actually doing anything else. And I think that was one of the good things, where I was able to relax coming home and reading.
What got you into the painting? Because I don't know if you know this about me, but I was a mute until I was like 12, 13.
Right,
so I never spoke outside the house. I didn't speak to children at school or anything like that. And I did art therapy, and that's what got me to speak. And just hearing you speak obviously sounds a little bit like art therapy, but it's also quite, you also have to be quite emotionally aware and in touch with your emotions to be able to translate that onto the canvas. So
Yeah.
where does that kind of come from, being able to express in that way?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Me as a person, I'm an introvert, so I don't tend to go out much or socialize or even speaking to people. I find it hard, even though I seem like, yeah, I can handle a conversation, but inside I'm freaking out completely. And I started painting just because it made me feel calm and I felt in control of what I was doing. And I didn't seem in control of my life and emotions, and that seemed all over the place. But then when it translated into a painting, I felt like, yeah, I've got a paintbrush in my hand. I know exactly how to use it, what colors. And that made me read more about art as a therapy. Like, you know, why do people do it? And what does it mean for me to be a therapist when it comes to using art? And in fact, about 2 years ago, I held a workshop in India. So when traveling, held a workshop in India where it was just abstract art as a therapy, and I delivered that based on all my experiences and how I cope with my day-to-day life, and it just comes out in painting.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I think it's super important. Part of the reason I was really desperate to get you on is I know you was involved in Nightingale, and you saw, I guess, kind of medical kind of side of COVID.
Yeah.
Now obviously you're working with like the homeless sector and people who are really suffering through loss of jobs or through just the vulnerabilities that their circumstances already presented. And I'm just interested to know, how has that like impacted you this year? Because you've seen COVID on a really like kind of, I guess, real end of the scale.
Yeah, I got you. It's quite eye-opening, to be honest with you, because when I was on Nightingale and I had people saying, oh, COVID's not real and it's all something that the government's made up and things like that, and you hear all these different people say these things, but when you're on Nightingale and you know exactly what's happening on site and you hear all these stories and you see people comforting each other and you think this isn't real? It's just sort of like dismissing all the rumors going on outside that world. And now that I'm on the outside and not really seeing it from a clinical point of view, I'm seeing how much it's affecting people, especially in like my local community here in Catford and like Lewisham. I've seen like the youth, some of the youth that I mentor, they've been struggling with their mental health. And the biggest thing I've seen that's in both, whether you see on one end of the scale or the other, is mental health. Like that is on the decline, where people really need to look at each other and take care of each other, pull each other up and things like that. And I think on both situations, it was, how do we look after our own mental health and a person just next to us? Because I still remember one of my colleagues, they had received the news that their grandparent had died, and he was there, just stood like with his whole military face on, didn't affect him in the slightest. And I just thought, how are people capable of just putting on a really good poker face and just, it was their mission, their purpose, their job before anything else, because it was looking after loads of other people. So I've learned a lot from a huge group of people on site and brought it out to serve the local community here on the project I'm currently working on. Yeah.
It's I totally agree what you say about the poker face thing. Like when you're at work and when you're in it, there's some incredible things that people do with their mental health, but it all adds up. And you just, when you're at work and you don't have a choice, you can get on and it's easy. And, you see people pass away and you watch people suffer, and then you get home and you kind of have to forget about it, because otherwise there's no way you could cope.
Yeah.
And it's just, but also then you find, like I find now that looking back on it, I don't want to look back on it. Like I don't try and remember what has happened. I keep that away for another time, which is really interesting, but it's probably not very healthy.
No, it's not. It's traumatizing to the point that on Spotify, shuffle some of the music that comes back where I've like discovered it during the pandemic. I can't listen to it anymore. I just skip past it. So it's gone to a point where I don't even realize that I'm skipping a song just because I first discovered it when I was on Nightingale or when I was just at home after work. Yeah, I just can't listen to the songs. It's scarred me. Some really good artists work down the drain.
It's time for the quick fire round.
Okay, Kay. What is your favourite Christmas film?
Oh my days, The Grinch.
What was your favourite lockdown snack?
Prawn cocktail crisps.
Walkers?
Yes, of course.
What was your worst lockdown purchase?
Oh, what did I get? Did I even purchase anything? No, I just bought a subscription to Amazon Prime and did nothing with it. So that's probably the worst purchase.
What has been your highlight of the week this week?
Sleeping.
What was your favourite lockdown series?
Ooh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Ah, great series.
What is your favourite piece of sportswear?
Shorts. What I turned up in.
And the last question, where can we find your art?
Ooh, online, on my website. And maybe if the clients have still kept their stuff in galleries.
Kay, it's been a pleasure to have you. I've really enjoyed our time together. You've been super interesting and have taught me a lot about what you've been doing over the last couple of months. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for listening. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at MastersOfPod. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode and our previous ones. Please share and subscribe. It'd be great to have as many people listening as possible. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.